process with the clerk's department. I think we're now jumping on to the next
I think
part.
we're pretty wrapped up on the city clerk department, unless you have any questions there.
I don't think so.
Okay, so moving on to the council's legislative budget. Let's see. That budget definitely stayed within the 2% recommendation, and the increase, the most notable increases in travel for AWC in Olympia and the summer conference for one council member each, and for the International Conference of Shopping Centers and ECLAE, the climate control. So that was the one big increase in that budget. And we can have any questions you'd like for the legislative budget.
Any questions?
So I'm sorry, is that prospective? The budget, the increase, or you're talking? Okay.
No, it is. Yeah, it's in the proposed budget.
For the ICLEI conference, and where is that?
Oh, I don't remember where that is. I want to say Massachusetts, but I'd have to check.
Who's it? I'm just curious. I didn't.
Who's what?
ICLEI? What is ICLEI?
Oh, it was part of the International Conference of.
It's a climate.
It's a climate control, climate environmental conference.
So we're budgeting for the council to travel
For one member of the council to go.
to Massachusetts.
Yeah, I think didn't somebody from council go about 4 years ago? No?
Not that I know.
When I was mayor, I went to a climate conference, but the expenses were all paid for by outside of the city.
Okay, we can double check into that.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to see that expense.
Sure. Okay, the last section is non-departmental. Non-departmental resides in the executive department and includes programs and expenditures that benefit the city as a whole and really can't be allocated to any one division or department. So it includes membership dues for the city to many different organizations, including the Puget Sound Regional Council, the Association of Washington Cities, Sound Cities, and some other membership as well. Also in the non-departmental budget is the tourism program as well as human services. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes?
Councilmember Evans.
Just a quick one. I see that our human services, I guess it's our grant program, is still calculated at $7 per person.
Correct.
And it's been that way for as long. I know when I was on the Human Service Committee, it was $7. Is that pretty stable then at that point, or is that where we're leaving it at $7 per person?
I will ask our assistant city manager to address that.
Yes, it's still at $7 per person, but it's gone up obviously because of annexation. So the total amount has gone up significantly.
Yeah.
But there's no talk yet of raising the $7.
Is that a rate that we set?
We set it, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you.
And just for clarity too, because I've heard this question asked, this $7 is not an individual tax; it's levied on citizens. It's a way of budgeting, and we said $7 per resident for. It's basically an internal planning device for human services spending.
Great. Thanks, Kathy.
Yep.
So, Council, this is our opportunity this evening to ask general questions about the budget. If you don't like the direction the budget is heading, to suggest certain directions that it should go. My hope is that when we come back to the next meeting on the 9th, we have the opportunity to pass the budget. So, Deputy Mayor Spivey, see your raised hand.
So, yes, Mayor, just unless you want to have a question about exactly, we wanted to jump into the finance, and then we have also legal and human resources.
My apologies.
There are three other departments to make some presentations for you.
And that's kind of
to the city's function.
That's kind of where I was going, that under executive, we had the legislative, judicial, and information services also. Are they going to be presenting separately?
Kathy, were you going to be covering them, or?
No, the department managers.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll invite then information services and then judicial up.
Great. I asked first.
Mayor, council members, Joe Sherman, IS manager for the city. Last year has been pretty busy. We've conquered some major projects to improve our infrastructure. We moved from our Novell infrastructure to an Active Directory for Microsoft. That led the way for the transformation of the new email system, which went live December 1st. Also drives the the new cell phone program. We've moved from vendors to reduce costs and efficiencies. Moving the email system also created some efficiencies from the old system by minimizing the amount of servers we had in the city. And then it started meeting some of the records retention requests and public disclosure requests that we were handling, the amount of email we're saving. We moved to Microsoft 365 in the cloud, so all those services, we're not paying for energy and cooling, and so that's all handled in the cloud now. We also increased electronic file storage throughout the whole city, added some new modules to police systems, Sector and Cop Logic. These are tools for the officers to be more efficient. We replaced, as part of our annual asset replacement, over the 2 years, 160 personal computers with faster, lower profile, and more efficient systems. 4 years ago, I stood in front of you and said I was going to get rid of half the servers in the city by moving to SANS and virtualization, and we've done that, creating a $100,000 savings biannually. We updated the GIS aerial imagery and FEMA flood plan information in our GIS utility database. Added all the annexation layers in our GIS database, and achieved 99% compliance with the vigorous banking regulations for the payment card industry. We're real close to being done. We actually hope when we move in the new city, we'll hit the new city hall will hit the 100%. That's an infrastructure problem that we're running across. Coming up in the next year, we're looking at improving our records management system, and also updating our web content management system. So that's not only how the website works, but also our presence on the web. So how are we going to use Facebook and Twitter and all those things? So, and I'm happy to field any questions in regards to information services.
So I have a question essentially for you or for utilities, but why I get emails all the time. Why don't we have automated utility payments online? Do we just not want to enter into that exercise?
Online utility payments will be part of some of the future applications. To do that, there's probably about 3 systems or subsystems involved in that. It's not only your financial system, it's your maintenance system and so forth. So we have a plan, a 6-year plan, to move forward in information technology. Of course, that's doesn't come cheap, and it's going to be challenging to spread that out in 2-year budgets. So those things are in front of us. We're trying to do the best we can to get those in place. We are trying to look at some specific areas that we can turn on online pay that are easy to turn on, handled outside, not internally. So something in the cloud, we're going to look at doing that with court here real soon. So that's a low-hanging fruit that we can do, and hopefully that proves the value and we can keep that ball rolling. So.
Excellent. Good. Well, thanks so much for the work you've done for the city, make us more efficient, save money like you discussed. That's excellent. Questions? Councilmember Evans?
Yes, quickly, under the capital spending, it shows in IS ruggedized laptops. So those 5,000 in 2015 and 46,000 in 2016. What the heck are those?
Those are the laptops in the police cars. We're actually rolling those out now for field inspectors in regards to DSI, so that we can get them out in the field, so they're not coming back to the office to do reports. They're doing it mobile. But most of that's police and fire.
Okay. Are they just beefier machines that we have out there? Is that
absolutely? That's what they're made for. So they're military spec. A normal laptop is not going to handle the vibration of a police car very well while they're typing and running the machine. The ruggedized hand, the lap. So
okay, great, thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you.
Tammy, our finance director, is here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The finance department, basically, we are a support department, so we provide services to the other city departments. The big deal for 15-16 is that we're adding 3 new staff to replace these 3. Yeah, I don't think they're going anywhere. But anyway, had to say that. Our department, we have basically went up $100,000 over the 2-year period. That $100,095 of it is associated with staffing costs increase in wages and benefits, which equates to a 2% CPI increase for our payroll costs, and then 2% also for M&O, which directly relates to an increase in professional training, which we lost during the recession, and we're trying to recoup some of those losses to make sure that our staff stay abreast of their areas of expertise. So that's where we're at. I can provide answers for any questions that you have.
Great, thank you, Tammy. Anyone questions? Councilmember Sandberg?
For some that might not understand budget humor, you're not really adding 3 new positions.
No.
Okay.
You're right.
Just for the listening public.
3 new good ones.
That was a joke. Finance is not really adding 3 positions. However, you're adding 0.4, which is not really an addition. Can you explain that?
That is correct. It doesn't have a budget impact. What we did was we do have a position that is going to be vacant due to a retirement. That position, and when it opens, we will actually move another staff position, which is project term, to a non-project term, and then put the project term designation onto the existing position that is there now. So that does not change the number of project term positions that we have. We're just making sure that the project term applies to a vacant position and not one that we have, an employee in at this point. In addition, I had an employee request to reduce hours for personal reasons, and therefore, what we did was we decided that position could go down to 32, and with those budget dollars that weren't being spent or applied towards that position any longer, we were able to hire a accounting assistant, basically an accounting specialist, for 0.4% of it or for 0.4 FTE, and they come in for 16 hours and pick up that lost work and then some others. So basically, we're getting more work for the same amount of money. More hours of work, I should say.
Anyone else? Questions for Finance Department? Councilmember Evans.
Can I just clarify, Tammy? So I'm looking at, it's actually in the city manager's budget message here, where it talks about the finance split and classification change is a net zero impact. So we got 1 FTE finance analyst project term that's removed, and we've also got a senior accounting specialist that's removed. So then we're adding a financial analyst and an accounting specialist, which is taking those 2 positions that were there but have been removed, and they're replacing them. So that's where the revenue neutral comes in, or the net zero budget impact is.
Correct.
And then the FTE, the senior accounting specialist, is that the 0.4 position?
No, the senior accounting specialist is actually the position that is going to take over the project term designation. So the project term designation is coming off the financial analyst position, which is currently filled, and the senior accounting specialist position that won't be filled at the end of the year will take on that project term designation. So a existing employee has a protected regular full-time position.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thanks, Tammy.
I'm going to present for the court also, the municipal court.
Great.
And TJ is going to come up, and he's our court administrator, as you know, and this is his first time through our budget process. You know, every city does things a little bit different, so he's got the wonderful opportunity to spend time with us and do things the right way, which is the Bothell way. And so basically, we've talked about the court budget. I've been very involved over the last couple of years with the judge and with the new court administrator. And so basically the court budget, again, is pretty much status quo. The big change, of course, was a few years ago when the council decided that they wanted to have a employed judge rather than a contracted judge. And we've seen some change coming along with having somebody reside with the city and being employed by the city. And so we've added court security, which is very important right now, given some of the cases that are coming into our courts. So we not only have we added the court security, but we've also added hours to ensure that everybody's in a protected state during those times. In addition, in 2015 and 16, $10,000 has been added to the court budget because we're looking at video arraignment. It's kind of the new thing is video arraignment. So we all got very excited when the judge first brought this up. And there is some cost benefit to that, and there's some security benefit to doing that. But after looking at it a little bit further now that people are implementing this, we think we need to do a little bit more research and see how effective it really is. For the people involved on both sides. And so they're going to go ahead and complete that analysis, but the $10,000 is in the budget, and if it's found to be beneficial to the city, then those monies will be there to make that happen. In addition, the city is looking at contracting for probation probation services, which will have a net zero impact on the budget for the court, but will be very beneficial as far as operations and functionality of the court and the effectiveness of our court. So those are a couple of the things that they're investigating and looking at moving forward on in the next biennium. Do you have anything to add, TJ? Did I cover it all? Did I do okay?
You hit all the points.
Yeah.
Any questions? Councilmember Sandberg?
So tonight we approved a contract that would increase costs for indigent defense. Is that something that comes out of the municipal court budget, or does that come out of the legal?
Legal department. The legal department pays those expenses, and that just happens to be how Bothell operates. It's not designated to come from that department, but that is where it's coming from.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I did have one question. So, Tammy, it looks like the personnel budget actually declines from 2014. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I can. Personnel budgets can move up and down based on family situations and how many people are covered. So, thank you.
Okay. Good. Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you.
Thanks, TJ. Enjoy your night. City Attorney Joe Beck.
Thank you, Council. I'll be very quick. The City Attorney's office, as you know, covers prosecution and the civil side of representing the city. I think you're familiar with what we do. Our budget is actually quite short, and there's not a lot of moving parts to it. It's primarily personnel. And it has not changed from the previous biennium. There are no new lines that I'm aware of, or no new line items. The amounts have increased by either the cost that is absolutely necessary for those resources, or by the 2% that the city manager has indicated. We have a rather large bubble in our budget attributed to the public defense issue that came before you tonight and was just recently referenced. That is a significant increase in our budget, but it's not something that we have any control over, as we've talked about already tonight. So I won't belabor that point. But besides that public defense contract increase, the remainder of the city attorney's office budget has remained within parameters, has not increased in scope, and we're just intending to continue on as we have been. So,
Great, thank you, Joe. Any questions? That was easy. Thank you. Is Human Resources next? Jamie Marsden.
Good evening. I may be the last, but hopefully not the least. The HR budget, of course, our department deals with the recruitment and retention of employees, compensation and benefits, and labor relations. The budget request for 2015-2016 for the M&O has only been increased by $2,000, which is far less than what we were allowed to increase our budget. It only results in a 0.8% increase. The reason for that is as I was developing the budget and looking at things that we wanted to do a little differently, I tried to find savings to offset those requested increases. So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
One question. Councilmember Lamb.
Jamie, I had a question for you in something that's not shown here, and that's, it seems like we do a good job generally as a city of retaining our employees, that we don't have a particularly high turnover. What, in your experience in human resources, is the savings that we see as a city by having that policy of not having a high level of turnover of our employees?
Well, it's been a number of years as I looked at the statistics, but normally to have a replacement of an employee, you're paying at least half of what their salary would be in recruitment and training and so forth. So it does save quite a bit. And I just was looking at what our turnover rate was today, and we've been averaging less than 5% turnover for a number of years. This year, we had a few more separations that were just, I think, as a result of our economy improving a little bit. Plus, we're seeing retirees. Our employees, we have a number of them are getting close to that. But we do an excellent job of retaining our employees.
I know that you're a big part of that, so thank you for that as well.
Mr. Evans.
Yes, Jamie, I'm just curiosity question. Looking at our authorized position classification listing back in the appendices, we have a position control number that goes all the way through 300 and something. Well, it goes through 380, and then it looks like the new positions are right at the end of that we're adding. So those numbers will just continue 381, 382 right on through. Is that correct?
Yes, there'll be assigned numbers as soon as they are approved.
So the position control number, is that actually the employee number, or do we have an employee number system?
We basically assign a number to the position, not to the employee. The employee has a separate number.
Okay. So as I've looked through this, and it has all the positions in here, I just pick one for an example. It has firefighters in one place, 2 or 3 different places listed throughout here. Why are they not all lumped together in one area?
That's because of the approvals of new positions at different times.
That's the way that the city is growing in
as
positions.
they're being added, of course, they get added to the end of the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or wherever they come in, they get added. Yeah. Okay. Great. That was it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Questions for Jamie? Okay. Ms. Marsden, thank you so much. Nice to see you this evening.
So, Mayor, that concludes all the presentations. There's a number of other funds throughout the budget document. We don't have a specific presentation for you on those, but certainly be available to answer any questions that you might have on those fund matters.
Great. Anybody want to jump in with questions? In addition to those already discussed this evening? Councilmember Lamb.
So I wanted to thank the city manager and the department directors for the presentations that they've made, and I think that one thing that I appreciate in this work is that it takes a collaborative effort from our entire team of the leaders of our departments as well as the different staff members in putting the budgets together. And I know that we have, as a city, been through a really, really difficult time economically during the Great Recession, and I think that we, as a municipality, really recovered from that, and we're now seeing being able to reinvest in our people. And I really appreciate the thought that went into this budget, and I look forward to the continuing improvement of the economy, so we'll be able to improve upon that. One item that I did want to raise is something that I know has come up in the past, and I don't want to steal Councilmember Evans' thunder, but I just wanted to sort of offer in advance support of that, and that is the idea of having a department director for Parks and Rec. And I know that we have some personnel changes that are coming up that might mean that could be achieved without necessarily reclassifying that. So I know that's out there, and I know that's something that I wanted to just kind of put in that I'm interested in exploring in the budget. And with that exception, I fully support the city manager's budget, and I appreciate the work that everyone put into this, because it's a lot. I know it's a lot of work, and I appreciate that very, very much. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Councilmember Evans?
Well, thank you, council member. That is a great segue into my first item, which if you have your budgets handy or something, if you can just go to the city organizational chart, it's actually Appendix A1. If you have that handy, you can take a look at it. It's a great organizational chart. I feel like it's missing one key department, and that would be a standalone Parks and Recreation Department. And if you'll notice on that organizational chart, Recreation Parks Capital Projects is listed under Public Works, I believe, at the bottom. What I would recommend is that we move that department or that section and turn it into a department and put it on the chart, maybe next to the Community Development Department or Information Services, wherever it fits best. I don't want to mess up the nice layout of your organizational chart, but I would definitely like to see that as a standalone department. And I can this is something that, I've obviously thought about for a long time, and we've talked about over the years. I went back and looked at through some of our other budgets, and this discussion has come up off and on, and for various reasons we weren't able to do it at that time. And I'm hoping that this is the time we can do it. Things are getting better for us financially. We are adding additional staff in numerous departments and things. I think this is an opportunity with a change in staff coming up to take a look at this. And I guess, obviously, I have a strong feeling about Parks and Recreation and what it can bring to the community. I've seen that in other communities, and it really is an essential element in the community. And as all the services that we provide, a lot of people don't take advantage of them, but Parks and Recreation is one that a lot of people do take advantage of and use a great deal. And I think we have a good foundation for a department for the services we provide now, but I think the potential there's so much more potential there and so much more need. We have 4% of our capital budget, if I calculated right, is committed to parks improvements and things, and I think that we need to change that. We need to increase that somehow, and I think that we need a director there that has a background in this, that can look at different funding alternatives for us, whether it be a park district, whether it be a levy, or whatever the options are out there. We've talked about these before, but I think we need to really spend some time in looking at that and look at our funding for the department. I don't know how many positions this would require, new positions. I would think that whether it's a reorganization or reclassification or additional positions, I'm not necessarily have that answer. My recommendation would be is that this department would include an administrative section that would include capital projects, comprehensive planning, would fall under admin. Parks M&O maintenance would be, which we have under Public Works. If that could be shifted over under, I'd recommend it come under Parks and Recreation. And then our recreation programs would be another division there too. So I think there's a lot of things there more that we can do in the city to increase and add to the services that we're providing. So we have so many projects in addition to looking for additional funding. Capital projects, we need more parks, we need a pool, we need a community center. We have 77 acres of developed parks in the city. We have 150 acres of open space, which is great. But there's a real demand. With Snohomish County, we're short on parks in that area, but there's other areas of the city. So I think with this department taking a focus, specific focus on parks and recreation, and I appreciate the job that Aaron has done in Public Works. I think it's talking with the staff. They Parks and Recreation has been accounted for under Public Works, but I do think we're at a time. I think we're at the size of a city now where we can have a standalone Parks and Recreation department, and the benefits of that can add a great deal to our quality of life. So I would like to see a new department created, Department of Parks and Recreation, Cultural Arts, Community Services, however you want to couch it, and then move over the appropriate positions. And I would ask that the staff come back to us with a recommendation. If not, I don't know what's the best way to do that, whether before we adopt the budget or after, as they're looking at filling the new position of what that would be. And but whatever the best process is, I would like to see that happen.
If council is interested in further exploring this concept, and I know you've done that in the past, is I would recommend that we wait to evaluate our revenue situation next year. We have some pretty significant matters we're going to be talking about during the first of the year during our retreat, how we fund many of the projects that were not supported within Proposition 1, how we're able to fund and maintain our streets going forward, whether or not an RFA is something that you're interested in, and then the parallel question to that is what property tax rate will you be charging? All these things will have an impact on your ability to fund a Parks and Recreation department, which is simply more than a reclassification in my mind. If you really want the significance and you want the importance and the ability to really push forward Park and Recreation services in the city, it's more than just reclassifying a manager to a director. It's providing that support staff. And we simply don't have those funds built in within the budget at this point in time unless we're willing to roll back some other expenses somewhere else. And so what I would recommend is wait for the retreat, wait for our ability to, and we start to make some decisions next year about our revenue, and then during the mid-biennium or prior, connection with the retreat discussions, start to evaluate the ability for the city to pursue a Park and Recreation department. I think right now it's premature. I'm not sure what we'd be able to do between now and next week unless you were able to provide direction on reducing expenses likely in the neighborhood of $200,000-$300,000 in order to create a new department.
Well, I guess that's what I've heard every year, is that let's wait one more year or let's wait till the recession's over or whatever. And in the meantime, other positions get added, new projects get added, things go on, and we don't accomplish this. And this is something that I think that the council has asked to do, and we've been patient and put it off. And I think it's time that we move forward. I can't see why we can't take the recreation manager, move that person to a Parks and Recreation director position comparable to our other directors. That's an increase of, I don't know how many dollars. I wouldn't think it's not $200,000-$300,000. Obviously, we've got a park operations, or we've got people in park operations now that could move over. We've got recreation staff there now. So I guess if we do nothing other than create the department and move the corresponding people into that department, I can't see that as a big cost. Eventually I would like to see the department grow, but I guess so. I'm not understanding the.
Well, I think there'll likely be, and again, we've done some analysis in the past that we've shared with council. I didn't bring that with me this evening, but there's administrative staff most likely that would be necessary to support that director position. Otherwise, you're really not getting the full sort of value for a higher paid individual if they're also doing clerical and administrative work. And so there are some more expenses than simply just a reclassification in order to make a new department. And you're right, the council has discussed in the past, but at the same time, the positions that we're promoting in this year's budget are not adding new services. In some cases, they're returning some prior services that the council asked us to look at in terms of getting back to kind of pre-recession level of care and services. And then it's just keeping up with the ongoing demand for, preservation and maintenance of our streets and our parks and landscaping. So this is not a budget necessarily that's adding something new, such as what a Parks and Recreation Department would provide to us. So if there were the revenue available, we would support that, but there's not the revenue available. And the only way you can create that new revenue source to do so is to roll back some expenses.
Well, and that's why I think we need a new department to look for revenue sources. They're out there, and we've talked about some, but we've never moved on any of them. And it doesn't seem to come high enough to the top of the bucket to get consideration. It's down here at the bottom. And Public Works has done a great job, but they have a huge department they're involved with, and it's not going to get the consideration. It hasn't to date, anyway.
Well, the only reason it hasn't risen is because there's simply not the revenue supported. There are many other positions that are noted in the budget message that didn't get funded either, that are just as important, if not more important, given we're just trying to keep up with the level of demand, and we're not able to do that.
Councilor Evans, would you yield for just one moment? So, I think one point. I think one of the points that Councilor Evans is making is that in a strict reclassification, I agree with you. I don't think you're going to get the same value as having a standalone Parks and Rec department. But I think the difference is you've planted a seed of something then that can begin. And I think, with all due respect to Councilor Evans, who did a great job as a Parks and Rec director, it is a different position. I think you might be able to attract somebody for that position who would be open to a broader scope of skills, who might not have the same level of administrative support that you wouldn't necessarily be able to attract in a public works position or a legal position or a community development position, simply because of the nature of the job. I know when I was a kid, the local rec director was somebody who wore a number of different hats. I would agree with you and concede that that's not ideal, but I do think it's a starting place, and I don't know that it would necessarily have to have the budget impact that of $300,000. I'm open to saying let's roll that into the conversation of the new year, but I think it is important. I think it's important to start somewhere, and I feel like we've never started that, and I think it is important to start that somewhere, whether that be with a full position that has admin or something else. That's a different. I think that's a different issue, but it's something we're willing to discuss. And I notice there's quite a bit of stir in the room, but actually the meeting tonight goes till 10, not till 9. So some people thought we were already 5 minutes over.
Councilmember Evans.
Well, and
thank you for yielding.
I realize that this is just the beginning, but if it doesn't ever get established, and even if it's established in a limited basis with moving some of the positions over there, I think at least we start somewhere and realize we can build from there. So,
Councilmember Evans.
I guess I don't see it as a 200,000 or 300,000, but maybe that is when we look at the costs.
Councilmember Sandberg, want to jump in for a second? You all right?
I had a question for Councilmember Evans. With the thought of starting somewhere, and what I heard, what you say is that it would be if we had somebody or hours in the budget dedicated to more attracting more grant dollars, applying for more grant dollars. I wonder if our in our existing positions, there's just not the bandwidth to do all that, to go out and aggressively seek grant dollars. And so as a starting point, would it be acceptable to maybe hire a half-time grant coordinator? Because it sounds, I'm not hearing that there's a disappointment in the maintenance of our existing parks. It's growing our park system, and to grow your park system, one of the ways to do that is to apply for and receive grants. So, and so that's sort of a stepping point. And then if that position is successful, then that is a stepping stone to a full standalone department. I'm just wondering what you thought about that.
In reality, there aren't very many grant programs out there for recreation development. RCO is it. Land and Water Conservation Fund is it. We don't have the opportunities that streets has in those types of things, the different programs. So we need somebody who that's their primary focus, to not only meet the needs of the city for parks and recreation improvements and things, but to look to fund those improvements through various sources, various different approaches in the financial system. So to me, it's not grants isn't the critical part, because that's a tough area where I think we're doing as best as we can do there under the circumstances, but it's really what do we want in the future, and how do we fund that? And somebody focused on that and working on that can come back to the council with some ideas of how we approach it. I don't think there's, if you look around, you can name almost any city, reasonable sized city in Puget Sound, and they have a Parks and Recreation department. It's a standard service that cities are providing and feel it's important to have and I'm not saying our services are bad, but I'm saying they're limited, and there's so many opportunities to expand them if we have somebody that focuses just on that area.
City manager.
So I think just from the little bit of discussion, you can tell this is an area that requires a fairly amount of broad discussion, because really what you're talking about is increasing the level of service for parks and recreation. And that's going to simply cost more money.
That's the point, right.
Well, I think even initially it's going to cost more money. Just simply expecting going from a manager to a director position is going to cost more money, and that's only going to give you limited value. If you're really trying to get the value of having a more increased services for park and recreation, whether or not that comes from more of an entrepreneurial spirit through your collection of fees to establish programs, or if it's all going to come out of a dedicated funding source like property tax, those are questions that we have to explore further. But I'm not sure that we're going to get there between now and next week is my point. And I would recommend that we save this discussion for the retreat, because you have a lot of other big-ticket items that we're going to need to discuss about how we're going to fund in the future. That's going to compete with Parks and Recreation. That's going to compete with the 5 or 6 positions that I didn't recommend, but I would have recommended to you had we had the funding. And so I think you need to look at all that and sort of that fuller context, rather than simply jump and say, let's establish a Park and Recreation department without really knowing what the full cost of that department is going to be, or really what your expectation levels are for that department at this point in time.
Or maybe we need to go back and look at our entire city and say, what are our priorities, and maybe we need to change some priorities or something here.
That is another route. Again, because we have a limited amount of tax revenue in which to support. You just have to decide where you want to spend that. And that does mean making those decisions about, well, we'd rather spend more in park and recreation, but less in some other area.
Councilmember Evans, would you be open to putting this on our council retreat as one of the top 5 items? Or do you want to continue to try to?
It's been on there. The last 2 or 3 council retreats, it's been there, and we haven't got anywhere with it. So I thought this year we're growing. There's additional revenues.
But I guess I'm not making myself clear. There's not additional revenue. I mean, the budget is balanced. There's no more additional revenue. In fact, we're not able to meet our 15% reserve that we initially had pinned. We're able to make 13%, and we hope to be able to actually get there with some one-time development room. So we have to roll back some expense somewhere else in order to create more bandwidth or more level of service for park and recreation. And so if you were to tell me where you want that decreased at, I will come back with you with a budget to implement a park and recreation director. But you're going to have to roll back some expenses somewhere else.
Well, and
that's
I get
the issue.
And I'm certainly willing to take a look at that. Obviously, you and the staff know the expenses of the city far better than we do. And I would think, if we say that's a priority, it would be nice if you would come back to us and say, okay, we can roll back here, or we can roll back here if you feel Parks and Recreation is a higher priority. But if you want me to do that, roll it back up here.
No, that's, I guess, what I'm asking the council is you need to determine what are those priorities. We tried to do that with at the beginning of the year with the budget outcomes in terms of what you want to set as a priority. And if Park and Recreation is a top priority, and if something else is the bottom, we're just simply not going to fund that bottom priority. But we need to kind of go through that prioritization process to kind of put Parks and Recreation to the mix. We haven't done that yet.
So, if you wouldn't mind, Councilor Evans, you know what, I'd volunteer to spend some time with the city manager and with Councilor Evans to talk about this after the meeting between this week and next, and try to see if we couldn't come up with something that would be acceptable to the rest of council. If you're both amenable to that.
Well, and that's fine with me. I guess if there's not support on the council for this, a majority of support, then we don't need to spend that time. I don't know what the other council members feel about it.
Okay.
So
Maybe
that's something we need to poll the council and see if that's even something they want us to consider.
That's appropriate. Councilmember Agnew wants to jump in.
I'd be in support of it.
So, I mean, just one more thing. I think the key is revenue. If you're willing to reduce expense somewhere else, then that's obviously a full council discussion to determine where you're going to reduce expenses. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to fund what you're proposing to do. Or you create a new revenue source. And you're not going to be able to do that between now and next week. I think that's a fuller discussion that you want to have during the retreat, and also consider some of the other needs that you're going to be facing in the future years too.
Councilmember Sandberg.
I understand Councilmember Evans' frustration, because I know that we have talked about it and put it, put it for a future discussion, and I understand that. But I also understand that we have a fixed amount of revenue unless we're intending to increase it or finding expenditures elsewhere to cut. I mean, another example of needs that are in the budget is the street fund. I mean, from what I look, the street fund goes down to zero at the end of 2016. Is that right? No? Yes?
The street fund is the special revenue fund, and at this point, because we don't receive MVET funding anymore, it is subsidized by the general fund. And so for the year-end purposes, at the end of the year, whatever money is not spent, we just reverse out the transfer of money over. So it's not that it doesn't have any funding. It's that it's truly a part of the general fund. So when you look at the general fund balance, that really applies, since the general fund is what is supporting it at this point.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. But I guess the point is that it's a need. I mean, and so I guess, and I am supportive of our Parks and Rec division, but I guess at this point, I don't see us increasing revenues or cutting expenses in some other place to make that additional division. Again, we don't know how much it would cost to create a standalone department, but what I hear from you is that we need somebody in the director position to really promote Parks and Rec. And what comes back to me every time we've had the retreat is the same memo that we get every year, which is, this is how you increase the revenue stream for parks. You can do it by increasing property taxes. You can have a parks district. You can do a levy. I mean, it's just like the same thing that we keep looking over and keep saying, but we're not getting any more revenue. So I guess I don't support it at this point, but I definitely support us having this conversation at the retreat and making sure that if we're going to do a budget amendment, that it's in the context of knowing that we want to add the Parks and Rec standalone department.
Well, I'm willing to continue the discussion. It just always is a discussion, and we don't move forward. So, and maybe we need to go back and look at some of the positions we're adding and say, are they higher priority than this, or whatever the case may be. So,
further items?
I did, but
well, let Deputy Mayor Spivey jump in, and then you can take just a moment.
If I may, on this subject, we definitely need to keep discussing this. I think we are, as Councilmember Evans said, we're getting to that point where we're the size of a city where we need to have a Parks Department with its own director. I think one of the reasons why we need to keep this discussion going and through the retreat is there's possible opportunities later on where if the RFA Planning Committee comes back with a recommendation to move forward and that vote passes, that now there would be some revenues that we could, in assistance with moving forward to with some reclassifications and finding a little here and there to help kind of fill that void to meet that goal. So I think there's some possible opportunities down the road, but to capitalize on that, we just need to continue having this discussion so that it's in the forefront when the opportunity arises, if it should. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. You still have the floor.
Just hit a couple of these other items real quick. One-time expenditures. I had requested a parking study for the city that we talked about when we were downtown. That's not in there. I think we have, let's see, what do we have in one-time expenditures? It's page E20, I guess.
Page E20.
Page expenditures, page 20. We have $191,000 in there in general one-time expenditures. Park impact fee study, permitting fees study, infrastructure maintenance projects, core financial program for employees, citywide employee customer service training. $191,000 in there for 2015, and another $192,000 2016. I don't know. I thought the parking study was something that the council was interested in. So I'd like to see organizational charts for each department included in the budget next year instead of having them lumped into the back here. I think I've asked for that before. There was acquisition of 31 acres in 2015 in Parks and Recreation. I'm not sure what that's for, or if that was an issue in the bond.
Just to take a break, I'm still trying to catch up to where you were on the personnel. You want to see for each department a management tree?
I'm just saying, in budgets that I've looked at before, there's an org chart at the beginning of each department that shows the department layout and the positions and things. It's been helpful to me in the past. I don't know if that's something that...
If you'd like that to come back next Tuesday, we can specifically...
I'm just saying that that's something that could be included in future budgets, or it could be added to this one, too. I had some questions about the Park Cumulative Reserve Fund, Vehicle Replacement, Asset Replacement Fund. What's our criteria? Maybe there's one place that we could find some money in our Asset Replacement Fund. Maybe we extend replacement of vehicles 1 year or 2 years, and what does that do for us as far as funding? It wasn't clear. I was looking for where the reserve funds were reflected in the budget and the excise tax. I didn't see those. I'm sure they're in here somewhere, but that's all I have. Yep, that's it.
Okay. Does anybody else want to jump in? No. So let's go back to this parks discussion, because there's not clear direction on where we are going. I heard that there was support for further conversation to have this. So Councilmember Evans, I understand if you sound frustrated, but it sounds like you have a lot of support for the conversation to continue. I know that it's continued for 7 years, and it's not yet implemented, which has got to be a great frustration to you, because you, more than any other, know the great impact that a parks director can have on the city in a positive manner. Are you, I guess you'd like to see a change tonight to the budget as we then approve it next Tuesday. I hear from the city manager, we don't have enough clear direction to say we need to remove $250,000 or $400,000 from other areas in the budget to support a new parks department. If we want to do that, where should that come from? So I think that's a pretty long, in-depth discussion. Are you open to passing the budget as is or making some changes with the commitment that we come back at the council retreat with the great urgency to do an amendment to the budget?
I guess I don't think it's too much to ask for costing out what a range would be for a Parks and Recreation Director based on what our current Recreation Manager salary is. How much more do we need to increase that? What's that cost? What would be involved in moving, actually, we're actually only moving the someone for Public Works from the park side maintenance supervisor over to under Parks and Recreation. To me, that's somewhat of a lateral move. That's still, and I've worked in situations where those Public Works and park maintenance and street maintenance, we still work together as needed and help each other. But at least it's a department that's functioned or directed in one specific area, and that's. I guess I just don't see the $200,000 or $300,000 cost. I don't think it has to be that way initially. I think we can form the department with what we have, maybe add a little bit if we have to, and then move forward from there. So I would like to see that a proposal come back to the council to do just that.
I'd be interested to see that org chart, like you're saying. I'm a visual person. So you're thinking about taking the existing 4 or 5 personnel that are already connected to parks, creating a parks department, but Aaron would still be the person overseeing the parks department for a year, for 2 years? What's your time frame?
Well, I was going to recommend that Aaron be the Parks and Recreation Director, but I didn't know whether that would fly. But no, I would take the Recreation Manager position, reclassify it as a Parks and Recreation Director position. You have the admin staff in there now that's there for the Parks and Recreation Department, or for the rec. You have a rec supervisor that's there. You have a part-time staff, I think, and then move the park maintenance, whatever positions are there in that over under the Parks and Recreation Department.
And on.
That's a starting
You
point.
may not want to make a public opinion about this, but do you believe that the current Parks and Recreation, how do I say that, administrator is the person that you see long time in that position? Because you're saying you would reclassify that position, which naturally means that person becomes the Park and Recreation Director.
I'm just saying we happen to have Pat Parkhurst, who's done a phenomenal job for the city and Parks and Recreation, is retiring. Mm-hmm. We have an opportunity to look at. Here's an opportunity for us to look at changing that now and creating upgrading that position and into a director position, and then developing a department with what we have.
What month is Pat retiring?
We're going to have to replace that position anyway, hopefully.
Her last day is February 27th.
Okay.
I don't have the pay salaries in front of me, but what is the pay increase to go from the current position to the reclassified position?
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think that might be a conversation would be better to have, just since we've attached a name to a person, that might be better to have that conversation, to give an opportunity for the city manager.
Well, right now, we're just talking about specific classification.
Right. I think part of that was we did analyze that, probably that simple reclassification changed a couple years ago whenever we prepared our last analysis of the various options. And so I didn't bring those this evening. I didn't know it was going to come up. Mm-hmm. But certainly we can bring that back and have more discussion about that next week. And we can very easily cost out for you the difference between a manager position and a director level position.
What I'm looking for.
Because all the other changes Councilmember Evans is talking about are really not a cost issue. It's just a assignment issue of where those individuals that are currently employed by the city, who they're going to report to.
That's right.
If you look in the Appendix A2, it lists our classifications and salary ranges, and you can look and see what the other directors are paid, what the other deputy directors or senior superintendents, whatever the case may be. It's all the ranges are kind of there. So,
okay. There you go, Bob.
Yeah, and I don't know offhand what would be the appropriate market classification for a park and recreation director comparative to our other directors. We'd want to make sure we appropriately place that person, but it'll be within the range of the highest paid director to the lowest paid director. It'll be somewhere in there.
Perfect. Anybody else? Any further comments, questions, or direction tonight? Councilmember Sandberg?
You had said that you wanted to have council weigh in tonight so that staff has all the direction that they need. And
That's right.
I provided a lot of questions, and I got some responses tonight, and I'm waiting for some more. In general, I like the budget direction. I just I need time to receive and digest the information that I have received. So for that reason, I don't have anything more specific to add tonight. I mean, I think we all always look at personnel costs. Personnel costs are the biggest costs for city budget, and for most departments, they've increased, and so that's not something that we can control because these are step increases and benefits and COLAs that have already been negotiated, and they're not things that we can change for this budget. But maybe going forward for future budgets, maybe that's a conversation we can also add to our annual council retreat on, how we can continue to sustainably fund our budget in the face of it seems like perennial increases in personnel costs that don't match what our revenue increases are.
Okay. Any other thoughts or direction? No? All right, well, that will conclude the budget discussion until next Tuesday. So, Bob, hopefully you and your staff have clear direction. Otherwise? So, next item on our agenda, I believe we have no executive session tonight, no city manager report. So, the next would be an update on the Public Safety Committee discuss fireworks.
Sure. So, Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Spivey and Councilor Agnew, are you comfortable with me giving a report for the committee? Or
That'd be great.
So we had an opportunity to meet on the fireworks issue, and we had a good discussion as a committee. The consensus that we came to was that this is an issue on which there's people on both sides of the city and people of goodwill who really like fireworks and people who don't like fireworks. And we're not in a position as a council, based on the information that we received, to make a recommendation to ban fireworks as a council or to modify our existing fireworks ordinance. Nobody who's currently on the council ran for office either pro-fireworks or anti-fireworks or made that a part of their campaign. There have been a number of people in the last month or so who have reached out to the council and reached out to the paper about banning fireworks. And as we discussed as a committee, rather than sort of have an open carnival where people would be invited to come in and sort of say yay and nay how they feel about fireworks, there's a robust difference of opinion in the community about that issue. And if those who wish to ban fireworks believe, as they've stated many times, that there is broad, widespread public support for banning them, they have the ability to take that to the people in the form of an initiative. And that would be a recommendation, is that those who wish to ban fireworks collect the required signatures and put that on the ballot and that would be a good test of public opinion to whether or not their friends and neighbors agree with them. As was noted in the meeting, a lot of times with this issue, if you're really passionate about something, if you're really passionately pro-fireworks, generally people who are sort of quietly anti-fireworks don't offer their opinions. So you can get a somewhat distorted view of how people view the issue because you're very loudly pro-fireworks. Similarly, if you're very loudly anti-fireworks, generally friends, acquaintances, neighbors who are quietly pro-fireworks aren't necessarily going to feel comfortable to offer up their views. We didn't believe as a committee that it was appropriate for 7 people none of whom had made fireworks an issue in their campaign to make a decision for all 41,000 people in Bothell on this issue. So that was the recommendation of the Public Safety Committee. And unless there's a member of the council who wants to step forward and say that they do want to ban fireworks, that would be our recommendation to the full council moving forward.
Great, thank you so much for the update. And anybody else wants to comment on this item? Yeah, Councilmember Sandberg.
Well, we've heard from community members throughout the years about fireworks, and in the latest activity in the last few months, it was not my understanding that the people who were interested in this issue were proposing an outright ban. What they wanted to do was engage in a conversation about what changes could be made to our fireworks code that would make it a more enjoyable experience for everybody on the 4th of July. So, there's
Councilmember Sandberg, if I may, when you say an outright ban, do you mean an outright ban? I think the people who have written to us in the last several months are advocating a ban on the private discharge of fireworks, but rather having a public fireworks display. So when I use the term a ban on fireworks, I don't mean to suggest that we would ban public displays of fireworks. I mean changing the status quo in Bothell, which is banning private citizens from being able to discharge and light off fireworks. That when I say a ban, that's the term that I'm using, and I think that is exactly what the people who have been writing us are asking for.
Well, but I think people have also asked for a spectrum of things, to just look at the fireworks code and to see what elements of safe and sane fireworks can be introduced. So it's not necessarily an outright ban on the personal use of fireworks, but you said that if that is what this contingent wants to do, they can collect the required signatures for an initiative. I mean, that's something also that we could, as a council, pass a resolution to put that on a ballot as well, to put the vote to the people that way as well. And by having a public process where people can contribute to the ideas, then we can get to maybe some choices that we could provide to the community at the next election or in a future election, as opposed to just I think if you say people who want to ban fireworks collect enough signatures to get it on the ballot, they're gonna put a choice out there that says ban fireworks, when there is possibly a whole range of choices that might be more palatable to the community, but we would never know because we're not engaging in a public discussion about that. And so I still think that the citizens, whether one of us ran on a pro-fireworks or anti-fireworks platform or not, the community is still interested in this topic. And by having a public hearing on it or a study session on it, it gives them the opportunity to weigh in on it. And so I don't think there's any harm in having that discussion. I think that we could potentially arrive at solutions that no one else has thought about, because we'll be bringing new voices to the table.
Okay.
And I think the bar, I think the bar to tell a citizen, collect the required signatures and get it on the ballot yourself is pretty high. But I guess if they're interested and engaged enough, they will do that. But I don't believe in setting the bar that high when we can facilitate the process here.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Councilmember Evans.
I've kind of conducted my own poll, and it's... And I have to say, as I was raising my family, we had fireworks displays in the cul-de-sac every year, and they were great. Now that I'm more mature of age, I don't really care about fireworks. I don't like them in the middle of the night when I'm trying to sleep. So I've run the gamut on this, and talked with people, and I guess I'm not sure what's out there, because many communities have studied this, and it's either you ban fireworks or you don't. I don't know that there may be, but I haven't seen it come up in other communities that have discussed it. Of here's an alternative, but you can do safe and sane, or which is what we currently say in the city now, or you can only do them between 9 and 10 at night, or I don't know what the options are. But to me, the issue has really been ban fireworks or not, or leave them the way they are. And that is a very debatable issue that maybe an advisory ballot or something is the way to go on that, and see what people really feel. Because we could have these meetings, and we'll fill these council chambers with people who have a lot of opinions, and that's fine. But I think what it's ultimately going to get to is this is a decision that a lot of people are going to can express their opinion on through the vote. I would think if there's new ideas out there, I'm not aware of them. I haven't seen them surface in other communities anyway. But
Deputy Mayor, any comments? No. So I believe we've all been able to engage in our own public discussion with each person, and we've had that opportunity on this dais just now. We've had it in the past. We've allowed people to come up to the podium and address council on this issue as well. So at this point, I do not sense any support to come back as a discussion for the council. We've already had it at committee. So with that, unless we want to open up for another round of discussion.
So,
do you want to?
I guess I'll take my opportunity for the first round.
Great.
Is that I think the committee's recommendation of, be it a citizens-led initiative or a council-led vote, to put it to the people, that's what I would still stand by. Is the passion runs high on both sides of this issue. So let's let the people speak for themselves as to how they want to deal with this, and that would be to, again, one way or another, let's get it on a ballot and let the people make that decision on their own.
Okay, good. Councilmember Agnew.
And I think we also have to keep it in mind, even the cities that have banned fireworks has not eliminated fireworks. They still have the same issues that we do.
Good. So just before we go to another round, do you all want to open it up for another round of discussion? No? That's it?
you said council-led initiative.
So I think we've had the opportunity to speak on this. Are there other items that we've not discussed as a council this evening?
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Mayor, if I may, I just to let you know, and city manager as well as the rest of the council, I will not be at the next two meetings. I will be helping my son, who's getting out of the Coast Guard, drive all his worldly possessions back from the north coast of Maine back here to Bothell. So I will be busy helping him get across the North American continent back home.
We are all extremely proud parents of our children.
Yes.
And I get a little emotional about this because I've had the opportunity to sit with you after many a council meeting and hear the great love for your son and how proud you are of his service. And I am proud as well.
Oh,
I hope that drive is a very memorable one.
It will be. Also, point of personal privilege, I just like to let everybody know that Bothell High School is playing for the state championship in the 4A football this Saturday, and it will be televised on Root Sports, I understand. And so if you can't make it to the Tacoma Dome, we definitely enjoy your support by watching the game. And it's been a fun year, and the community support for the team has been really great. And I just want to, on behalf of the football program, thank the community for their support, and we hope to do them proud next Saturday.
Awesome. Thank you, Dale. Councilmember Agnew.
I, too, will be missing the next two council meetings, so I just want to let you know.
Thank you for giving me your proxy. Councilmember Evans.
Mayor, you're probably going to shoot me for this, but I do want to try to resolve this fireworks issue. To me, it's down to two things. I think there was a majority of the council felt like leave it to the voters. Okay? So then the next question is, do we initiate that, or so those are the two things that I think are still left for us to make a decision on. Do we do that ourselves, or do we let the public bring that initiative forward?
I heard four council members say that they'd like to leave the public make that decision.
Is that what they said?
I didn't say that's right. I didn't say. Yeah, I heard it. I heard that the decision, you wanted the decision to be made by the voters, but the question was not resolved of whether it should be a citizen-led initiative or a council resolution to put a measure on the ballot.
Well, I heard that the committee report was 3 committee members came forward to discuss letting the public make their own, go out and get their own initiative. The people would do it.
That's not what I heard.
And to be clear,
Would you like to restate what?
No, I mean to be clear, if people, what I would say is, there's a lot of people right now who have emailed us on this issue. If those people feel, believe, and to be clear, the overwhelming majority, they're not looking for a nuanced answer. They're not like, well, there might be multiple approaches. They're like, ban fireworks. I hate fireworks. I don't want to have anything but a public display of fireworks in the city. That is an either or choice. All of those communications suggest that there is wide, incredible, deep support in the city for that point of view. I would say give those folks an opportunity to see if they can collect the signatures. If they can't, and they're like, we went out and that's too steep of a hurdle and it's not able, then they can come back to the council and say, but we think it's appropriate that the council have a chance to decide. I don't think it's our place to say, I got 15 emails from people who want to ban fireworks, so I'm going to spend everyone's resources to put this on an advisory ballot. That's not, I don't think that's a good use of our time. If, in fact, they go out and they try and they fall, a couple hundred signatures short, then I would probably reconsider that opinion. But I'd say at least, right now we have a lot on our plate in the next 3 months. I'd at least let those people who believe it's a valence issue in Bothell test the waters and find out if their opinion is correct, if everybody really does agree with them on the issue of fireworks.
And the committee members, do you agree with the presentation that your fellow committee member gave? So I would be the fourth to that. So there's your 4.
I'm fine with that too. I just want to clarify that because I thought I heard Councilmember Lamb say whether it's an advisory ballot or whether I thought there was some. That was a question that was still out there. But if the recommendation is let's see what happens in the next day.
Great. Okay.
So
Mayor,
yes.
I'm guessing it would be the city attorney's office come back and let us know exactly what the signature requirement would be for citizen. It doesn't have to be tonight, but it could come back.
Yeah, it would probably take me about 2 minutes, but I can have that answer for you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor to close the meeting this evening? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Oh.